Hi there, my name is Aubrey and I'm an opera singer and a voice coach. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about AI. It's such a hot button topic, I know. And of course, this discussion is entirely my own personal opinion. It's not rehearsed in any way. It's essentially functioning as an outlet for me to talk through some of my feelings about how AI is encroaching into the music scene. So, without further ado, I kind of see AI similarly to how I see cameras and photography, in the sense that when they arrived on the scene, they didn't make the art of painting extinct. They evolved into their own genre of art instead. And in some ways, I still maintain this idea, but I've since developed some concerns that have kind of surpassed the challenges that photography brought up way back then. And even though a camera is a machine, there's still a person using it, learning techniques and developing a personal style and spending their energy and their time developing this narrative that they want to convey to another human being. And I think that's what's really critical in terms of a difference between photography and AI. If we were to pretend that it's not controlled by a human being and we just stripped it down, AI is just a program. And unlike a camera, it also can function beyond human expectation, which is by design. And I see that some people even aim to have it stand in the place of brains. And I just want to preface all this by saying that I'm not inherently opposed to tools or afraid of how technology is going to inevitably continue to influence the future. And by future, I mean art. But I've genuinely come across people who have openly expressed that they want AI to actually replace artists entirely because we're slow, we're expensive, we're more focused on our art rather than profit. And to these folks, I have just a couple of things to say. First of all, musicians are people and AI is not. The audience really likes to be able to connect with other human beings when it comes to emotions and situations, because I think it makes us feel less alone. I think a lot of people feel connections to their favorite artist because they like knowing about them and possibly finding shared common experiences. I think that's something that's insanely critical, that humanizing element, because that's also why we still go to live performances when we have stuff like Spotify and had things like iPods and Walkmans. I know I find myself seeking biographies and even like other projects by artists that I admire because their story is just as important to me as their individual creations. I like to also understand what's good and bad and ugly about these people because I want to be able to make the most informed decision on what I consume. I think it's really important for us to identify the fact that, like, it matters where art comes from. And if we strip that all away, then we lose this deeper meaning and the broader context to a piece of art. And as a result, I would end up asking, is this even art? Or is it just another widget created by a company to be sold? And I think additionally, if we were to have an AI artist who has none of this background, no skeletons in their closet, so to say, then you end up with something sterile and vapid, which you can argue is happening now and has been happening pre-AI. And if we're going down that same route, we can also say that AI has skeletons in its closet if we're going to talk about ethics, which would be a whole other video. But you know, back to the point, like, by not having something deeper to build from, you end up with things that don't feel genuine or authentic or human. And I know some people have tried to send me things that were AI art, and they're like, see, it looks just like a human being did it. And I'm like, regardless of whether it looks just like a human being did it or not, it wasn't done by a human being. And for me, that matters. It doesn't have to matter to you, but it does still matter to me. I also have come across this quote that has stuck in my brain ever since I heard it. And it's, AI gives the wealthy access to talent and keeps the talented from wealth. This has just been absolutely defining my current interactions with AI and a lot of people who engage with AI discussions. Because by continuing to minimize the value of artists, we really don't allow for genuine high quality art to be made. We simply just don't have the space for it anymore because of the sheer volume of content that's being produced and the hours in a day that somebody as an audience member might have to consume it. If we don't teach art in schools, then the next generation won't understand the difference between these products that are coming out in mass, right? We should be teaching art so that people can discern the nuances of genres and mediums and quality. Although art is similar to beauty in the sense that it's, in the eye of the beholder, I think there's still room to talk about what we can and cannot consider art. And again, nobody has to agree with me, but I just find that I struggle to connect with things that aren't created by a human being. I've seen really cool projects using things like computers and machines and even AI, but there's still always a person who is heavily involved and has a story to tell. And I am the intended listener. If I were to ask AI, something that does not live, struggle, feel pain, or have any real emotions, for that matter, to make a song, I just don't see how it can be art without the creator being alive. And to continue that, it's unable to comment on things using lived experience or emotions. It can only draw from information that it scrapes from the internet, which makes it somehow both biased and yet also unopinionated. In reality, that means it just doesn't have any dogs in the fight of life like the rest of us. It has nothing to lose or gain because it's just a program. Humans, on the other hand, live and die based on the world around us, based on our choices and based on the choices of others, much to our chagrin. And I think that art really comes from the dreadful awareness of our own mortality. And I think that that art is far superior to anything that a computer could spit out in 30 seconds. As a result, the art that is made by AI is a product. The program then becomes this tool to maximize productivity and lower the cost, which, in my opinion, is just not the goal of music. I've been told many times how efficient AI tools have made the process of art creation, and my response is the same every single time. I like the process. I don't have any interest in speeding it up or skipping these steps because that's actually what I find fun. I like the challenge. I don't want somebody else to come in and solve my jigsaw puzzle for me. What's the point of doing the jigsaw puzzle if it is not me sitting here and struggling over it? I think it's that difficulty that really allows me to put my deepest, most honest feelings into my work. Because without that, I think I would end up producing shallow, uninspired, and generic sounding content. Which, again, people could argue is already happening with or without AI. Additionally, back to the skeletons in the closet concept, AI products are stealing from real artists and not providing compensation or even acknowledgement to the sources, and that's a problem. As it stands, AI, in my opinion, is completely unethical and abusive towards real creators. I have yet to see a program that seeks to address this issue. And of course, if you have a program that is currently trying to address this and find solutions, then I would love to engage with it and learn about it. But until then, my current view is that I don't really see any systems coming out and being honest about how it functions and the ways in which it needs to steal in order to do so. I believe if there's no ethical way to train these models without exploiting all of our hard work, then I really think it should just be put to rest until we can do so. There are pathways we can use. There are rules that could be put in place. There are systems that we can use as fail-safes. We can start discussing what AI looks like when it's applied ethically to humanity. But I just don't think that we have taken into consideration how fast this system has grown and how far it's gone completely unchecked. I mean, we don't have anything reining this thing in. And as a result, it's kind of just become the Wild West. We have already been facing so many uphill battles with the streaming industry, the ticketing industry, the record labels, everybody. It feels like everybody wants their piece of the exploitation pie in the music industry. And I feel like we are at a critical time as artists where we need to truly consider building a stronger union and seeking to control our art and the ways we disseminate it. And at risk of sounding too trite, we need to figure out a way to seize the means of production for ourselves. This is not about waiting for solutions or hoping for reform or waiting for somebody else to come up with a plan. We really lack government representation in the form of some sort of arts council, at least here in the United States. I can't speak for other places, but we don't have protections in place for our exploitation. We don't have anybody in the government representing our interests. We are losing arts education in school from kindergarten all the way up through university every year, and we don't prioritize middle-class artists with things like a base salary and easier access to government-funded grants. And I think there are projects that we could begin to work on as a collective if we found some sort of system that connects us and reminds us that our survival is dependent on focusing on our shared humanity rather than being pitted against one another and being picked off one by programs like AI. I mentioned also earlier about how things like productivity are just like the number one marketing tool of AI to try and get artists to use it. But honestly, speed and quantity are just not the goals of art. But they are the goals of AI. And I don't mind if my content takes longer to make. And I don't think having more of it will necessarily make me a better artist. In my opinion, it's really only relevant if I'm trying to quantify my success in the same way that I do with something like social media. There's a pressure to be consistent for the algorithm in order to maintain momentum and to stay in the news feed of the audience and bow, 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 bow. I think we've just taken out of sight, out of mind too far, because now everyone I talk to feels overwhelmed by the ads and the inundation of requests from people. They can't help but notice that all of the companies that are providing us services are just trying to figure out as many ads they can stuff into our faces before we start getting like too fatigued. And I just don't want to live in a world that's like that. I, as a human being, do not exist to consume ads. My time should not be turned into a commodity that can be traded on Wall Street. I just don't see how this will be a sustainable way for life and a way towards happiness and fulfillment. I like to make content because I enjoy it, even if nobody else cares or I don't make a single penny. I do it because I'm a human being. I would literally still choose to pick up a stick and practice drawing pictures in the dirt or hum a tune with no words while harmonizing with the world around me, even if I had nothing to my name, because art is so deeply connected to my lived experience. And not just my lived experience, but the experience of all of us. And I think that's what's so critical for us to be reminded of and to share with one another, is that this is something that we experience together. We are always at risk of not creating the best art we can make, because it's always going to be in the back of your mind that, oh, I have to make sure that this is still something that people want to engage with, this is something that people will want to like or share or buy, and that's something that's really hard because it ends up taking away some, maybe not all, but some of the reason as to why we make, why we create. And I think that's something that I've been grappling with a lot recently. The camaraderie I feel from a lot of my colleagues has been unmatched. It's truly amazing to hear what everybody's talking about in terms of reform and change and revolution would look like in the music industry. And of course, this can be applied to other industries as well, but as a musician, that's kind of where I'm coming from. I think that the more we talk about the similarities between one another, the easier it will be for us to come together to make permanent change based on the shared goal of creating a better future, not just for us, but future generations. So I hope you enjoyed my late night ramblings with another opera unscripted, although this wasn't really related to opera. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you have anything to correct me on or would like to add some more context to what I said, perhaps I missed stuff or I'm a little bit behind the times. Everything moves so quickly. So I do try to read as much as possible, but it moves so quick. So if you have newer information, feel free to share it in the comment section because I'm always looking to challenge myself and grow. So thanks so much for sticking by, and I hope you always keep on singing.